The Galactic Integration Academy floated like a jewel against the velvet darkness of space. 17 species called it home. 12,000 students from across the known universe walked its halls, breathed its recycled air, and learned to coexist in ways their ancestors never imagined possible. And somewhere in that magnificent monument to interstellar cooperation, a human girl named Mira Chen was about to ruin someone's entire existence. But we'll get to that. First, you need to understand something about humans at the Academy. They were the newcomers, the fresh meat. Earth had only achieved faster than light travel 60 years ago, which in galactic terms meant humanity was basically still learning to tie its shoes. Most species had been spacefaring for millennia. The Vorks had conquered 3 star systems before humans figured out fire. The Kethrani had built their first space station when humans were still debating whether the Earth was flat. So naturally, humans got treated like the new kids at school, because that's exactly what they were. Mira Chen had been at the Academy for 3 months. She was 17, quiet, and kept mostly to herself. She had dark hair that she wore in a practical braid, sharp eyes that noticed everything, and a way of moving through crowded hallways like water flowing around stones. Most students barely registered her presence. That was intentional. See, Mira had learned early that being invisible was safer than being seen. Back on Earth, in the settlement domes of New Shanghai, she had been just another face in the crowd. Her mother worked in hydroponics. Her father maintained the atmospheric processors. They were nobody special. They had nothing special. And Mira had grown up understanding that sometimes the best way to survive was to never let anyone know what you were capable of. So she stayed quiet. She studied hard. She avoided trouble. Until trouble came looking for her. His name was Zorvax. He was Kethrani, which meant he stood nearly 7 feet tall, had skin like blue granite, and possessed 4 arms that could bend steel beams. The Kethrani were one of the apex species in the Galactic Council. They had seats on every major committee. Their military was legendary. Their culture prized strength above all else. And Zorvax, dear friends, was a perfect example of everything wrong with that philosophy. He was a bully, not the subtle kind who destroyed you with words and social manipulation. No, Zorvax was old school. He liked to hurt things. He liked to watch smaller beings flinch when he walked by. He had spent 3 years at the Academy, making life miserable for anyone he deemed beneath him, which, in his mind, was everyone. But he had a particular hatred for humans, called them soft, weak, unworthy of their place among the stars. He had sent 4 human students to the medical bay since the semester started. Nothing that left permanent damage. Of course, Zorvax was cruel, but he wasn't stupid. He knew exactly how hard to hit, to cause maximum pain, without triggering an official investigation. The teachers knew. Everyone knew. But the Kethrani had power. Political power. Economic power. And Zorvax's father was a senior minister in the Kethrani government. So nothing ever happened. That was about to change. It started on a Tuesday, or what passed for Tuesday on a space station that orbited a binary star system and used a 26-hour day cycle. Mira was in the cafeteria, eating alone as usual. She had her tablet propped up against her water glass, reading about quantum mechanics, trying to ignore the chaos around her. That's when she heard the crying. It was coming from 3 tables away. A small creature, barely 4 feet tall, with mint green skin and enormous dark eyes. A Felani. They were one of the gentlest species in the galaxy. Empaths. They could feel the emotions of everyone around them. They made excellent counselors, terrible warriors, and they absolutely did not deserve what was happening. Zorvax had the little Felani by the front of her uniform. He had lifted her completely off the ground. Her feet dangled uselessly. Tears streamed down her face as she whimpered in terror. "I said apologize," Zorvax growled. His voice was like grinding rocks. "You bumped into me. You made me spill my drink. Apologize properly." "I did," the Felani sobbed. "I said I was sorry. Please, please, you're hurting me." "Not yet, I'm not." The cafeteria had gone silent. 300 students watched. Nobody moved. Nobody helped. Because everyone knew what happened to people who crossed Zorvax. Mira set down her tablet. Don't do it, she told herself. It's not your problem. Stay invisible. Stay safe. The Felani screamed as Zorvax squeezed harder. Mira stood up. Later, people would ask her why. What made her do it? What possessed her to walk toward a 7-foot alien killing machine when everyone else was backing away? She never gave them a satisfying answer. The truth was simple. She was tired. Tired of watching. Tired of pretending she didn't see. Tired of being afraid. Hey! Her voice wasn't loud. She didn't shout. But something about the way she said it made Zorvax turn. Made everyone turn. Mira stood 10 feet away from him. She looked so small. So fragile. A 5'4" human girl. Facing down a Kethrani warrior twice her size. Put her down, Mira said. Zorvax laughed. It was an ugly sound. Or what, little mammal? Put her down, Mira repeated. I won't ask again. The cafeteria held its breath. Someone in the back whispered that she was insane. Someone else started recording on their tablet. Good. Mira wanted witnesses. Zorvax dropped the Felani. She hit the ground hard and scrambled away, still crying. But he wasn't done. He never was. Instead, he turned his full attention to this tiny human who had dared to interrupt him. Do you know who I am? He asked, taking a step closer. Do you know who I am? Mira replied. That actually made him pause. Then he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. You're nobody. You're nothing. You're a jumped-up primate from a backwater planet who thinks she can play hero. He cracked his knuckles. All 4 hands. Let me educate you about how the galaxy really works. He reached for her. What happened next would be discussed in the academy for years. It would be analyzed in combat classes. It would become legend. 10 seconds. That's all it took. Zorvax grabbed for Mira's shoulder with his upper right hand. She wasn't there. She had already moved. Her body dropped low, her left leg sweeping out. It connected with his ankle at precisely the right angle, at precisely the right moment, when his weight was shifting forward. Kethrani had dense bones, hard to break. But joints were joints. Physics was physics. And a body in motion stayed in motion, until acted upon by an outside force. Like the floor, Zorvax went down. Hard. The impact shook the tables around them. But Mira wasn't done. Before he could recover, she was on him. Her knee drove into his solar plexus. Kethrani kept their primary nerve cluster there. She knew because she had studied, because she always studied. Her elbow came down on the junction between his neck and shoulder. The pain receptors are connected directly to the brain stem. His upper arms went numb. He roared and swung with his lower arms. She ducked, twisted, got behind him. Her forearm locked around his throat. Not a choke, a blood stranglehold. It cut off circulation to the brain. Even Kethrani needed blood in their brains. 3 seconds. He was struggling. 5 seconds. His movements were getting weaker. 7 seconds. His eyes started to lose focus. Yield, Mira whispered in his ear. He gurgled something that might have been a curse. Yield, she repeated, or I will put you to sleep, and you will wake up in medical with everyone knowing that a jumped-up primate from a backwater planet made you take a nap. 1 second passed. 2. I yield, he choked out. Mira released him. She stood up slowly. Stepped back. Zorvax lay on the ground, gasping, all 4 arms limp at his sides. He looked up at her with something he had never felt before in his life. Fear. You asked if I knew who you are, Mira said quietly. Her voice carried in the silent cafeteria. You're a bully. You're a coward. You hurt people who can't fight back because it makes you feel strong. But you're not strong. You've never been strong. You've just never met anyone willing to show you the truth. She turned to leave. This isn't over, Zorvax spat. Blood dripped from his lip where he had bitten it. My father will... Your father will do nothing. Mira didn't turn around. 300 witnesses just watched you attack a student and get beaten by a human half your size. The recordings are already uploading. By tomorrow, Every species in the Galactic Council will be laughing at the mighty Kethrani. She paused. That's what happens when you put your hands on the wrong person. She walked away. The cafeteria erupted. Some students cheered. Others sat in stunned silence. A group of younger humans looked at Mira like she had just hung the moon. The Felani she had saved was being comforted by friends, but kept staring at Mira with those huge dark eyes, gratitude radiating off her in waves. Mira ignored all of it. She made it to the hallway before her hands started shaking. The adrenaline dump hit her like a truck. Her knees felt weak. Her heart was trying to beat its way out of her chest. That was insane. She turned. A boy stood behind her. Human, tall and lanky with messy brown hair and a crooked grin. She recognized him. Dex Morrison. He was in her xenobiology class. They had never spoken. "Are you actually crazy?" he asked. "Do you have a death wish?" That was Zorvax. His dad could make your family disappear. He won't. How do you know? Mira finally let herself smile. Just a little. Because his dad cares about one thing more than his son's pride, the Kethrani reputation. And right now, the best way to protect that reputation is to pretend this never happened. She started walking again. Trust me, they'll tell Zorvax to leave me alone. They might even transfer him to another school. Problem solved. Dex jogged to keep up with her. "Where did you learn to fight like that? I've never seen anything like it. My grandmother..." "Your grandmother taught you to dismantle aliens?" "My grandmother taught me to survive." Mira stopped at the door to her quarters. "The aliens part won't figure out myself." She went inside before he could ask anything else. Alone in her room, Mira sat on her bed and let the shaking take over. She had broken her own rule. She had let people see her. Let them know what she could do. 3 months of careful invisibility, gone in 10 seconds. But she thought about that Felani's face. Thought about the 4 humans in medical. Thought about everyone who had ever been afraid to walk down a hallway, because Zorvax might be there. Maybe being seen wasn't always a bad thing. Her tablet buzzed. A message from an unknown sender. She opened it. "The Kethrani do not forgive. The Kethrani do not forget. You have made an enemy of the wrong family. Human, enjoy your victory. It will be your last." Mira read it twice. Then she deleted it. They thought they knew her. They thought she was just some girl who got lucky, who caught Zorvax off guard. They were wrong. They had no idea who they were dealing with. And by the time they figured it out, it would be far too late. She lay back on her bed and stared at the ceiling. "Okay, Chen," she muttered to herself. "You wanted to stop being invisible. Congratulations. Now everyone's going to be watching." She closed her eyes. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. 3 days after Mira Chen publicly humiliated the son of a Kethrani minister. She woke up to find her door welded shut. Not locked, welded. Someone had used a plasma torch to fuse the metal frame together during the night cycle. She was trapped inside her own quarters. Mira stood in front of the door for a long moment. Then she started laughing. "Really?" she said to the empty room. "This is your big revenge? I'm mildly inconvenienced." She went to her window. Space stations didn't have traditional windows, of course. They had reinforced viewing panels made from transparent aluminum alloys. But the principle was the same. You could look out. You could see the stars. And if you knew what you were doing, you could also remove the emergency access panel. 20 minutes later, Mira crawled through a maintenance shaft and dropped into the hallway 2 floors below her quarters. She was late for class. She was also covered in coolant residue and smelled like recycled atmosphere. She didn't care. The Kethrani wanted to play games. Fine. She knew how to play games too. She walked into xenobiology class like nothing had happened. Every head turned. Whispers erupted. She ignored them all and took her usual seat in the back. Dex Morrison was already there, eyes wide. He said, "You have something in your hair. Probably lubricant from a ventilation system." "The ventilation system?" Long story. Professor Holloway, a 4-armed centauri with perpetually frazzled feathers, called the class to order, but the damage was done. Everyone kept stealing glances at Mira. The girl who had beaten Zorvax. The girl who was still walking around like she owned the place. The girl who clearly had a target on her back. After class, Mira found out just how big that target was. "You need to see this," Dex said, shoving his tablet at her. "It's all over the network." It was a bounty, an actual bounty, posted anonymously, but clearly Kethrani in origin. 50,000 Galactic credits to anyone who could put Mira Chen in the medical bay. 50,000, Dex breathed. "That's more than my parents make in a year." Flattering. Flattering? "Mira, half the station is going to come after you for that kind of money." "Let them." Dex grabbed her arm. "Are you listening to me? This is serious. You can't fight everyone." Mira looked at his hand on her arm, then at his face. "No," she agreed. "But I don't have to." She walked away before he could respond. The first attack came during lunch. Mira was walking through the Commerce District when 3 figures stepped out of an alley. 2 Dromax and a Yanari. The Dromax were reptilian, heavily muscled, built like tanks. The Yanari was smaller but had venomous spines along her arms. Nasty combination. "Nothing personal," one of the Dromax said. His voice was a rumble. "But 50,000 is 50,000. Mira set down her food container. Sighed. Last chance to walk away. They charged. The Yanari came first, trying to close distance so she could use those spines. Mira grabbed a display pole from a nearby merchant stall and swung it like a bat. It caught the Yanari across the temple. She dropped. The Dromax attacked together. Smart. They had clearly done this before. One went high, one went low. Classic pincer movement. Mira jumped. She planted one foot on the lower Dromax's back and launched herself over the higher one. As she passed, she drove her elbow down into his skull. Dromax had thick heads, lots of bone, but the spine was still the spine. He staggered. She landed behind them. Spun. The display pole came around again and connected with the standing Dromax's knee. Something cracked. He screamed and fell. The one she had elbowed was recovering. He turned toward her, murder in his yellow eyes. Mira threw the pole at his face. He batted it away. Exactly as she expected. It gave her 3 seconds. That was enough. She closed distance, got inside his guard. Her palm struck his throat. Her knee drove into his groin. Her fingers found a nerve cluster behind his ear. He went down. The whole fight took maybe 30 seconds. Mira picked up her food container. It was a little dented, but still intact. She looked at the 3 unconscious figures on the ground. "I warned you," she said. Then she walked to class. Word spread. By evening, everyone on the station knew what had happened. 3 professional bounty hunters, taken down by a human girl who hadn't even spilled her lunch. The bounty doubled. "This is insane," Dex said. They were in the library, supposedly studying. 100,000 credits. That's serious money. You're going to have assassins coming after you. Good. Good? How is that good? Mira finally looked up from her tablet. "Because every person who comes after me is someone I get to send a message with. The Kethrani think they can scare me. They think if they make my life difficult enough, I'll run. I'll hide. I'll beg for mercy." Her eyes were cold. Hard. "They're wrong. I'm not running anywhere. I'm going to stand right here and break anyone they send. And by the time I'm done, they're going to understand something very important." "What's that?" "That humans aren't prey." She smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. We're the predators who taught ourselves to be polite. Dex stared at her for a long moment. "You're terrifying," he said finally. "You know that, right?" "I've been told." The attacks kept coming. Over the next week, 7 different individuals or groups tried to collect a bounty on Mira Chen. A Krellian assassin attempted to poison her water supply. She noticed the smell and tracked him back to his quarters. He woke up in a maintenance closet with a broken arm and a note pinned to his chest that said, "Try again." A pair of synthoid mercenaries tried to ambush her in the gym. She used their own strength against them, redirecting their charges until they literally punched each other out. A Nashian bounty hunter tried to snipe her from across the promenade. She had spotted his reflection in a window 2 minutes before he fired, moved at the last second, and sent campus security his location. He was arrested for possession of illegal weapons. Each time, Mira walked away without a scratch. Each time, the legend grew. People started calling her the Ghost, because she seemed to appear and disappear at will, because she moved through the station like smoke, impossible to pin down, because she had a way of being exactly where you didn't expect and never where you looked. The bounty hit 500,000 credits, and then the Kethrani made their move. It happened on a Saturday. Mira was in the observation deck, watching the binary stars spin their eternal dance. She came here sometimes when she needed to think. It was usually empty. Not today. Zorvax stepped out of the shadows. He wasn't alone. 6 other Kethrani flanked him. All of them were big. All of them looked like they had been bred for war, because they probably had been. "Hello, little mammal," Zorvax said. His voice was different now. Colder. More controlled. "Miss me?" Mira turned slowly to face them. "I was wondering when you'd stop hiding behind hired thugs." "I wasn't hiding. I was preparing." He gestured at his companions. "These are my cousins. My blood. They've been warriors since before your species learned to walk upright." He smiled that ugly smile. "No bounty. No tricks. Just a lesson you need to learn." 7 Kethrani. 7 killing machines. Mira should have been terrified. She wasn't. "You really don't get it, do you?" she said quietly. "You still think this is about strength. About who can hit harder, who can take more damage." She shook her head. That was never the game. "Then what is the game?" "Information." She pulled out her tablet, held it up so they could all see the screen. "Your father is Minister Zorvax of the Kethrani Interior Council. He's currently negotiating a trade agreement with the Terran Confederacy worth 3 trillion credits. It's supposed to be finalized next month." Mira swiped to the next screen. "Except I have records of 7 occasions where Zorvax accepted bribes to influence council votes. I have recordings of him discussing how to manipulate commodity prices. And I have a very detailed account of the time he ordered the assassination of a political rival and made it look like an accident." Zorvax's face went pale. Even for a Kethrani, that was impressive. "Where did you get that?" "I told you. Information is the game. I've been playing it since I was 12 years old. Every system can be hacked. Every secret can be found. You just have to know where to look." Mira lowered the tablet. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave me alone. All of you, forever. The bounty gets canceled tonight. And in exchange, I don't send these files to every news outlet in the galaxy. You're bluffing." "Am I?" Mira tilted her head. "Your father spent 40 years building his career, his reputation, his power. You really think he'd risk all of that just because his idiot son got his feelings hurt?" Silence. The cousins were looking at each other now, looking at Zorvax. The dynamic in the room had shifted completely. "One more thing," Mira continued. "That Felani you attacked. Her name is Sorra. She's 16 years old, and she was on a scholarship because her family couldn't afford the tuition. She hasn't slept through the night since you grabbed her." Myra's voice went hard as iron. "You're going to apologize to her. Publicly. And then you're going to use your family's money to establish a scholarship fund for species that are traditionally underrepresented at this academy." "I will not." "You will, or I push send." Zorvax looked at her, really looked at her, and finally he understood he had never been the predator in this situation. He had been the prey. "How long?" he asked. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the day I got here." Mira put the tablet away. "I did my research before I ever set foot on this station. I knew who the bullies were, who the power players were, what leverage existed. When you attacked Sorra, I saw an opportunity and I took it. You wanted me to come after you. I wanted you to expose yourself, to overreach, to make mistakes." Mira smiled. It was a smile of someone who had already won and was just waiting for everyone else to catch up. "You did all that beautifully." Zorvax stood there for a long moment, his fists clenched and unclenched. Every instinct in his body probably screamed at him to attack, to hurt her, to make her pay for this humiliation. But he wasn't stupid. Not completely. "This isn't over," he said finally. "Yes, it is." Mira walked past him, past all of them. She stopped at the door. "You wanted to know what humans are capable of. Now you know. We adapt. We learn. We find weaknesses and we exploit them." She looked back over her shoulder. "We're small and we're soft, and we haven't been doing this very long. But don't ever make the mistake of thinking that makes us easy targets. We are anything but." She left. 2 days later, Zorvax apologized to Sorra in front of the entire academy. It was clearly rehearsed, clearly forced, but the Felani cried anyway, not from sadness this time. The Zorvax Family Scholarship Fund was established the following week. It would provide full tuition for 10 students per year in perpetuity. The bounty on Mira Chen was never officially canceled. It just disappeared. No one ever tried to collect it again. Life at the academy went back to normal, or as normal as it could be with Mira's new reputation following her everywhere. Students who had never given her a second look now nodded respectfully in the hallways. Teachers who had dismissed her as just another human now paid attention when she raised her hand. Dex Morrison asked her out 3 times. She said no twice and maybe to the third. Some things take time. On the last day of the semester, Mira found Sorra waiting outside her quarters. The little Felani looked up at her with those enormous dark eyes. "I wanted to thank you," Sorra said, "for everything. I don't know how I can ever repay you." Mira knelt down so they were at eye level. "You want to repay me? Get strong. Not like me. Not fighting strong. Strong in here." She touched Sorra's chest, where her heart would be. "Study hard. Make friends. Stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. That's how you repay me." Sorra nodded solemnly. "I will. I promise." "I know you will." The Felani hugged her. Mira let it happen. It felt strange, but not bad. After Sorra left, Mira stood in the hallway for a while, thinking. She thought about her mother in the hydroponics bays, her father maintaining the atmospheric processors. She thought about growing up in New Shanghai, in a world where humans were still learning their place among the stars. She thought about all the times she had been told that humanity was too young, too weak, too soft, and she smiled, because here was the truth that the galaxy was starting to understand. Humans weren't soft. They were adaptable. They weren't weak. They were efficient. They weren't young. They were hungry. And when you put your hands on the wrong one, you found out very quickly that 60 years of spacefaring wasn't nearly enough time to learn what humanity was truly capable of. The Kethrani had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 10,000 years. Mira Chen was 17 years old, and she had beaten them without throwing a single punch. That was the thing about humans. They didn't have to be the strongest. They didn't have to be the fastest. They didn't have to be the most advanced. They just had to be clever. And humans, dear friends, were very, very clever. Mira walked to the viewport at the end of the corridor. She looked out at the stars. Billions of them. Trillions of worlds. An entire universe waiting to learn that particular lesson. "Watch out," she whispered. "Here we come." Somewhere out there, the galaxy shivered. It probably should have.